Hi, my name is Bunma and this is Ruby and Genevieve. Welcome to the PNC podcast. Today we have with us a very special guest. Please welcome the Chief Academic Officer of EL Education, Ron Berger.
Thanks for coming to visit us today. How are you enjoying Australia so far?
Well, first, I want to thank you all for inviting me. I've been on many podcasts and many interviews and on television, but I have never been interviewed by students before, and it is really an honor and a pleasure to have student interviewers in a primary school running your own podcast. I've seen nothing like this anywhere in the world. I'm so impressed. My stay in Australia has been wonderful so far. Thank you.
It's really great to have you here. What inspired you to start working in education and help create EL Education?
Well, I was a primary teacher myself for more than 25 years, and I taught in a school that's very much like Prospect North. My classroom had many animals in it. Students did really beautiful work. Students were in charge of many things. They built a playhouse, they built a recycling shed, they built an area of the woods where students could play. So the kind of education that I led when I was a primary teacher was very much like the education here at Prospect North, which is one of the reasons I'm so impressed with your school. And there was a lot of student leadership in my school. And so later I worked with a university in America, Harvard University, and helped join Harvard University with Outward Bound, which is an outdoor wilderness organization, that works to build character, student character and adult character in the wilderness. We joined the idea of academic excellence from Harvard University to the idea of building good character from Outward Bound and created a model of education called expeditionary learning, which we now call EL Education.
What was one of your favourite projects you did with your students?
Oh, so many favorite projects. I live in a rural town, which means I'm not in a city, and everyone in my town has a well for their water. There's no water system for the town. And the school has its own well, too. And we weren't sure if the water we were drinking was safe for people. We weren't sure what was in the water. So we got some friends at a university who have a laboratory where they can do water testing. And my students, who were 5th and 6th grade students, were trained by the university staff and students to run water testing equipment. So we got well samples, water samples from all the different homes in town. And my students spent 3 weeks at the university running an inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometer. So they did a spectral analysis to see what was in the water and was it safe to drink. And my students were so excited to do adult level science and be working in a university and to do a service. And they were able to create a report for every family in town about the quality of their water and whether their water was safe. So it was an important service. And 2 of the girls in my classroom were the ones who took the water sample from my house. And they said to me, "Mr. Berger, we need to talk to you in the hallway." And I said, okay. And they took me out in the hallway and they said, "We have bad news about your water. Do you want to wait for our report or do you want to hear it now?" And I said, "I want to hear it now. I don't want my wife to get upset." And they shared with me that there were some problems with my water that they discovered from the spectrometer report. And I now have a water filtration system in my home because my students discovered this problem. So that's a project that students were excited about, and it also did some real good for our community, including my own home.
That's so cool. Why did you choose to work with students in rural Massachusetts as a teacher and carpenter? Was there something special about it?
There was. I started teaching at a time when active teaching, where students could do a lot of things, make a lot of things, and connect the learning to the real world, was an idea that was starting to spread. And I found a small rural school that was so far away from other things that it could do some crazy and different things. As I said, my students built things, they tested things, they worked in the community, and I loved the ability of students to contribute what they were learning to making their community a better place. And so I also worked as a carpenter. I built houses because I didn't make very much money as a teacher, and I needed more money for my family. So on the weekends and in the summers, I built houses. And so I thought, well, if I'm building things, I can certainly teach my students to build things. And once I taught them carpentry skills, they designed and built a playhouse for the youngest students in the school. And they designed and built a recycling shed. And they designed and built playground equipment. So I was able to blend all of that in the setting in rural Massachusetts where I still live.
What was it like working as a carpenter?
Working as a carpenter was great, and it showed me so much about how to be a better teacher. Because when carpenters work, they need a model of what they're aiming for in order to know what good is. You can't just tell a person, frame a good window or build a good staircase. You actually have to look at how a staircase is framed, and you have to look at the trim on a window to see what the joints look like. You need a model to inspire you. Oh, that's what quality looks like. And that was very helpful for me when I became a teacher, because I thought my students need models of what great looks like, whether it's a great poem or a great essay or a great architectural blueprint or a great scientific report. And so when my students created scientific reports for the community, we looked at real professional adult scientific reports and we analyzed them. And my students were clear, that's what we're aiming for. Because in carpentry, models mean a lot, and in teaching, models mean a lot as well.
What do you love most about teaching and working with young people?
What I love most about teaching is how amazed and inspired I am by the beautiful work that students do and the beautiful thinking that students do. So I can use an example from today. Just today, I looked at Genevieve's conceptual map of how we learn. And Genevieve, you explained to me all the thinking behind the different processes, the iterative processes where students are struggling, where they're evaluating, where they're going back, where they're rethinking, where they're collaborating. And you have this very complex way of understanding how you learn and how others learn. It was really inspiring for me. I took pictures of your map. I took notes on what you said. That's what really inspires me, is when I meet students who are doing amazing thinking or amazing work, I leave inspired for the whole rest of the day.
You've written a lot of books for teachers and schools. Do you have a favourite book or project that you've worked on? Why is it your favourite?
These are excellent questions. I've written 8 books, and I think my favorite book is called An Ethic of Excellence. And it's my favorite because it's a very personal book with stories of my students and the great projects they did and the ways they helped their community. And when that book was first published, I was asked to do a reading of that book where, the author of a book comes and reads a section of the book and signs copies of his or her book. So for my reading, instead of doing the reading myself, I invited my students, who are the heroes of the book, to actually do the reading for me. And so I introduced them, and each one of them read aloud the part of the book that was about something great they had done in the book. They had grown a little older after I wrote the book, so when they came in to do their reading, they were about 18 or 20 years old, and they were reading stories of what they did when they were 11 years old. But it was so fun to have them be the heroes of their story and narrate the heroes of their own story.
What was the process like when you were writing your books?
My first 2 books I wrote alone, and that was hard because when you're writing by yourself, you need a lot of critique and feedback. And so my first book, I was very lucky to get a grant from an organization that put me in a teacher group where there was a whole group of teachers who would read my drafts of my chapters and give me kind and specific and helpful feedback to make it better. And so I needed that extra group to be able to have eyes on my work of things I missed and things I could explain more clearly. After my first 2 books, all of my other books were written with other authors, co-authors. And that process is a better process for me because we wrote it together. So we were always looking at each other's work. I was never alone in writing those books. And I either had 1 co-author or 2 co-authors on all of my other books. And we would argue and we would change things and we would read each other's work and give each other critique. And it made me a much better writer and thinker.
How did you come up with Austin's Butterfly?
Well, Austin's Butterfly is the way most people know who I am in the world. I think the video has, maybe 10 or 20 million views because it just has spread a lot. Originally, it wasn't a video. Originally, I was in a classroom with first grade students, and one of those students was Austin. And he had drawn his butterfly, and he had put it in front of his little critique group of about 5 other first graders, and they gave him really thoughtful critique about what he could change. And he went right back to his seat, and he listened to their critique, and he made changes right away, and he put it up, and they gathered again and gave him more critique. And he went right back and did it again. And I was so impressed watching him take their critique, make changes. He didn't get defensive. He didn't get mad. He just was like, oh, okay, thanks. He went back, made the change, did another draft. The process was so amazing for me that when he got to his final draft, I thought, this is a miracle. Like, he listened so carefully to their advice. He took their advice. He made smart changes. And their advice was so helpful that I said to Austin, can I borrow copies of all of your drafts? And I went to the school office and I made photocopies. I made copies of each of those so I could take them with me. And then I enlarged them and I put them on cardboard. And I traveled around the country telling the story of Austin and what a great learner he was and how all his friends helped him get better. And for about 10 years, I traveled around the country sharing that story. And then someone said, that I work with said, we need to shoot a video of you doing that with students. And so they shot a video of me doing that with students, and we had no idea that it would become very popular. But since then, it has millions and millions of views because I think everyone can see, oh yeah, we could all do that. We could all take critique and get better at what we do.
We know that your ethic of excellence is to cultivate a culture of craftsmanship and pride in the classroom. Why is that so important to you?
I love your questions, Ruby and Fatima and Genevieve. In life, I think we are all measured by 2 things: the kind of person that we are and the kind of work that we do. Are we a good person and do we do good work? In schools, often kids are measured by exams, and that's not a bad thing, but it's not the way life works. And so if we want schools to cultivate the kinds of people that we want in the world, we need to focus on students who learn to take pride in what they do, who have a good work ethic, and who really care about the quality of what they do. Because no matter what the 3 of you enter in your lives for the work that you do, the quality is what will matter. So by focusing on craftsmanship, we focus not just on preparing for an exam, not just on studying for a test that will be done, but on building an ethic in yourself that if you're going to do things, you're going to do them well. You're going to try hard, you're going to persevere, you're going to get critique, and you're going to create something that you're really proud of. And when you get that ethic in you, then everything you do in life can be better.
How and why do you celebrate your students' work?
Celebrating student work is my favorite thing in the world. And it's not just my students' work I celebrate. I really like to celebrate the work of students all over the world. I founded a website that is called Models of Excellence, and students from all over the world send in work that they're really proud of. And we have a team of people that curate that work and look at it and choose work to put online. So it's like a museum of student work, and it's the largest museum of student work anywhere in the world, and it's all free and open online, and it's from students who are age 3 years old to students who are age 18. So all different ages from all different places. I have some work from Australia, but I'm always looking for more. So when I say I celebrate student work, it's not just the work that my own students did, but students everywhere. So for example, I took pictures all day of beautiful work here at Prospect North. And Genevieve, in your case, I took a picture of your conceptual map of how people think and learn. And so I can share your map with other people to inspire other students to create their own conceptual maps of how they think people learn.
In our class, we set high standards and high expectations. Why do you think it's important to do so?
I think that we all want high expectations for us because high expectations honor a person. If you have low expectations for someone, it's really a sense of, it's kind of a disrespect for them. It's like you don't believe in them. If we have high expectations for each other, that means we believe in each other. And so it's a gift to have high expectations. No student wants a teacher that's too easy and too loose and doesn't care that they can do great things. We all want a teacher who's kind, but we want a teacher who will push us and push us to do greater things.
What is Models of Excellence, and why did you decide to create a place to share student work with the world?
Well, I think people don't realize the amazing things students are doing in the world. There's all kinds of work, scientific work, historical work, artistic work, literary work, poems, essays, reports, murals, podcasts done by students from all over the world. And people don't realize, wow, kids when they're your age can actually do amazing things like the podcast you're doing right now. And in fact, this podcast series is something I would love to get on our Models of Excellence website. Right now, if you go to the Models of Excellence website, one of the featured pieces on the homepage is a podcast done by students 1 year older than you that was made in America. And it won a national podcast contest. And it was a podcast on the epidemic of gun violence in schools in America. So it's a very heavy topic, and they did an amazing job on their podcast. I think when you listen to it, you think adults could have done this podcast. That's how good it is. This podcast yourself is a perfect example of the kind of work that people don't realize students can do. So after we do this podcast, I am going to try hard to see if I can get the information to see if we can get your podcast featured on our site for beautiful work.
Can you tell us about a time when you helped a school, or a student in a way that you'll always remember?
These are all wonderful questions. Yes, I am here with my friend, Gwyn Apari, who founded the XP schools in England. And I am so proud that when Gwyn decided to open a new school in England that was going to believe in every kid and have high expectations for every kid, that was going to focus on character as well as beautiful work, and that was going to focus on students getting smart to do good for their community, I had the gift that he came to visit me in America, and I got to work with him and plan with him. I got to bring him to schools that I thought were doing really brilliant work. And then he went back to England, and I've been able to come visit the schools he opened, and they're some of the best schools I've ever seen in the world. And so for me, it's such a gift to see I was able to collaborate with someone who built something so beautiful.
If you could give one piece of advice to students everywhere about learning or growing up, what would it be?
I would say that advice for students everywhere is believe in yourself and trust that the things you're passionate about are worth pursuing. So whether or not your parents or your teacher or your friends are as excited as you are about certain things, if you're excited about them, stay with them, practice them, get good at them. Whatever it is you're interested in, if it's video games, if it's programming, if it's dance, if it's football, if it's ever, put your heart into the things you're passionate about and be open to getting critiqued to get better at them. Because people think, maybe Genevieve is a great musician, but Ruby is not, or Ruby's a great football player, but Genevieve, that's not the way the world works. If we focus on things, we can all get great at things if we put our passion into it and we're willing to get critique and keep improving.
Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I have so many questions for you. But tell me what each of you have learned from doing podcasts, from being interviewers. What has changed for you personally by interviewing people?
Personally, I think I've had a major confidence boost since when I first started doing podcasting, because when PNTV first came to the school, I was in year 2, so I was very quiet. I didn't really volunteer myself to go out and put myself out there for opportunities. But since being a part of PNTV, I've had so many opportunities, and it's really helped me see how much I could have achieved if I put myself out there back then. But yeah, it's been such a great experience with PNTV.
With me personally, like Budma said, it's definitely boosted my confidence over the past couple of years that I've been here, but also it's helped me get deeper insights to what other people have said to me and think very deeply about them. One thing I've learned about interviewing people is that you have to be confident, and it's definitely given us all confidence boosts, and it makes me more confident to talk and do public speaking because podcasts and interviews.
Okay, I have one more question for you all. And I'm going to make a rule for this question. You can't use the podcast as your answer, okay? Can you think of something you've done that you're really proud of, but it's not the podcast, because you all should be so proud of this. So think of something you've created or something you've done in your life. It could be a thing or it could be an act that's mattered to other people. What's something that you're particularly proud of?
For me, it's this year we did the Festival of Music. So you get on stage with a couple hundred other kids and perform at the Festival Theatre. And it's scary, but it's also really fun to do. So I'm really proud of myself for doing that.
I think something I'm really proud of is at our school we have these things called ministries, and we elect ministers and we work with Marg to make our school a better place. And being elected as a minister for 2 years in a row, it's really good. So I've really had the chance to try and make an impact on the school. So yeah.
One thing I'm really proud of that I've done at this school is that I've been given so many opportunities, like being able to be a part of the ministries and on PNTV, but not the podcast. And can't think of anything.
That's great. So I am very serious about the fact that I would love this podcast, not this particular episode, but this podcast series that you are interviewing for, to be featured on this website so other people can learn from it. We do have other student-created podcasts, but those are about a topic where students are giving the information they've learned, or they're about talking about their lives. For example, there's a podcast in America called This American Life, where people just share stories of happening in America, and a bunch of high school kids in America started a podcast called This Teenage Life, and they talk about what it's like to be a teenager. But on the other podcasts that we have in this collection, students are talking from their own experience. This is something very different. You are taking the role of adult interviewers and interviewing important adults in your community and from around the world. So you are taking the role of the professional interviewers here. I have never seen that anywhere else, and I think this could be a really inspirational model for other schools to do. And what's really remarkable is that your primary students doing this. I think when people hear the story of this and get the link to see how they can listen to podcasts, I think people are going to be amazed all over the world.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ron. We really enjoyed your insight. Thanks for being a part of the PNC podcast. Take care. PNC podcast out.
Great job, guys. Wow. Yeah, so Marg, I have to get this featured on. I have to. Yeah. I travel all around the world talking to people about the capacity of kids to do great things. This is a story that they have to hear, the work you're doing here.
Nice as anything else.
You did an excellent job.